everybody for coming to our Small Wonders Awards reception. My name is Joanne Vaughn. I'm the Executive Director of Maryland Federation of Art. And it's always so fun to have Small Wonders in the gallery. It's the one show that people walk in and almost without question, they say, this is my favorite show. People love seeing the little work. They love seeing how clever everything is. Amanda, our juror, has a definite quirky sense of humor, which comes through. So if you are an artist, I want to thank you for sharing your art with us. If you are not an artist, whether you are an artist or not, I definitely encourage you to come and see the exhibition. It's absolutely wonderful. We had 168 artists who submitted 492 images. And these artists were from 29 different states. So our juror, Amanda Burnham, had her work cut out for her. But I think she was probably well qualified for this. Although Amanda is sort of known, if you Google her, she's known for doing large installations. So I think it is absolutely amazing. It shows the flexibility that talent has in appreciating other works and other media, in that she selected these 89 really tiny pieces. Everything, as you know, is smaller than 11 by 11 by 11. Amanda is the professor and 2D Foundations area coordinator at Towson University. She is an artist. She is a 3-time Individual Artist Award recipient from the Maryland State Arts Council and a Ruby's Grant recipient. As I said, she does a large installation work. And she holds a bachelor's in visual and environmental studies from Harvard University and a master's in fine art and painting and printmaking from Yale University School of Art. So I think we're in very fine hands. And Amanda, I want to ask you if you want to say a few words about the exhibition.
Yes, Joanne, thank you so much. And it really was a pleasure to get to jury this exhibition. As I mentioned in my written statement, that you'll see when you view this work on the website. I love this show because it is the submissions are incredibly diverse. Like the organizing constraint of size is one that ultimately permits a huge number, just almost any artist, I mean, can think of a way to submit for this show. And so it's an incredibly diverse range of things that I get to see as a juror. And it's, Joanne mentioned the cleverness, the intelligence, just all the power that can be packed into these very small works is very striking. So it was a joy to jury this show. And I'm looking forward to celebrating it with y'all today.
Oh, and obviously a show of this size for an organization of MFA size doesn't come about with a lot of help. Angela Patricio is a found object artist who has chaired this show for the past several years, and she does an excellent job of putting it together. There's 100 boxes to keep straight. There's a lot of work to unpack, a lot of work to pack back up. Everything's got to be measured. Is it the right size? Because that's the only criteria for the show. So I want to thank Angela for all the work that she's done. And Angela, I don't know if you want to say anything about the exhibition from your point of view.
I will. I'll just say that I always enjoy the show, and it was the first show that I ever entered when I joined MFA and got a piece in, and that was very encouraging. I like to work small too. That's another good reason for me to work on this show, because I enjoy small work. But I do have to give Amanda a great deal of credit. When I saw how many pieces there were for her to look at, I couldn't imagine doing something like that myself and honing it down to under 100. So my hat's off to Amanda. And I also just want to express my deep appreciation for the staff and the volunteers and all of the artists that made this show a reality. Thank you.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to present the awards, and Julie has a PowerPoint that I think she can pull up that will show you the work as Amanda presents her awards.
So just, yeah, to go through the statement I wrote for this. In the wake of nearly 2 years under the widespread trauma of COVID, I was fascinated by the opportunity to jury this year's edition of Small Wonders. Having had the pleasure to do so for a previous installment some years ago, I knew that the pool of submissions would be broad and broadly representative of a community in every manner except the dimensions. Small Wonders is historically a delightful show precisely because its accessibility is to almost any artist inevitably yields surprises. But in the aftermath of everything that we have collectively undergone, what themes might emerge? How have we changed, and how does the art we make reflect that? This year's show includes work that directly addresses the challenges of COVID, to be sure. Edward Schmoon's photograph Safety in Numbers, for instance, evokes both hope and dread in a scene with which we are all now quite familiar. A mass of carefully spaced folding chairs in what appears to be a mass vaccination site waiting area. In a digital work that pictures the Capitol building enmeshed in a blazing, peeling flag, Jane Mann centers political realities, wondering literally, will the fabric hold? Next. I was struck as well by the inwardness of many submissions. This year's show includes numerous portraits that seem to engage interiority with deflected, muted, or obscured gazes. The blurred face in Dan Schlappback's mixed media work Polaris has eyes cast downward and nearly atomizes in the midst of an inky void, backgrounding the deep set assemblage. Sampi Cicada's subject in Facades hides their face entirely, though the ghost of eyes, nose, and mouth appear surreally on the backs of their hands. In several selections, a fascination with the quotidian and domestic shines. Travis Donovan's charming small bronze works, Saltine with potted meat and Vienna sausage, endow the humblest of preserved foods with a surprising weight. The Lone Cupcake in Catherine Tatum Grossfeld's painting, Now It's a Party, evokes the sort of scaled down celebration with which many of us have become accustomed. And James Slezak's photograph, Loopy, reveals a riotous composition in the most easily overlooked of household objects, a pile of rubber bands. Perhaps in this strange time, the very organizing construct of Small Wonders may be especially resonant. Our lives have all receded to a smaller, slower, more intimate and domestic scale. It was a great pleasure, as I said, to jury this year's show, and congratulations to all the artists and to the individual award winners. So I'm just gonna go through the works a little bit, and I invite any of the artists that are here, if you'd like to say a word or two about the work submitted, please step in and do that. I really did enjoy Audrey Zara Franklin's work. The intricacy of these little, very, again, of course, it's Small Wonders, they're very tiny, but these sculptures have an incredible amount of really beautiful kind of organic detail that I find absorbing in person. So seek these out when you go see the show. Judy Genther's, I think I've got that right, Curves and Shadows. This is a beautiful photograph that I love for the lack of horizon line. I feel like I'm gazing out over folds of fabric or something. There's something beautifully disorienting about the way this is framed. Next. This piece fascinated me. It's very, very tiny, but it absolutely, it compels simply because it is so ambiguous. You find yourself being absorbed by the margins as much as this huge orb in the middle. It has a beautiful surface. I'm sorry, my young son is hammering on my door, my studio door. So if you hear incidental noise in the background, I'm so sorry. This lovely, the surface of, and again with the surfaces, this often happens at a small scale. This beautiful, beautiful piece by Bryn Alicia Williams-Meyer has a multitude of really beautiful tactile surfaces that come together to make this quite memorable portrait. Another one that just was so captivating in person, this textile work by Judith M. Rowe. The delicacy of this and the absolute mastery of the media, just deceptively simple, this one, very, very exquisite in person. Brian Harper's piece, Bunker Series, Century. This is struck me as sort of morbidly funny. I really enjoyed the humor in this work, as well as the sense of scale, even at a small scale. It made me think of a much larger space and a much larger context than its very small footprint. I mentioned this in my statement, Sampi Cicada, facades in colored pencil. I don't know if this work, and maybe Sampi is here and could say something. I don't know if this work presaged COVID or not, but it made me think of the time that we're in and the kind of strange sense of being in the world that has manifested over the course of the last 2 years. Really lovely. Leslie Kiefer's In Flight. Here's another one. This is true of really every work in this show. They are so exquisite and specific materially in person. And it was so important for me to see them and really enjoy them in person. And this one, it's beautiful, as you can see now, but the materiality of how it's presented, it has kind of these rounded corners on I think maybe a metal or an aluminum base. It is stunning as an object and really striking in terms of the image, because this bird, which seems obviously to be in flight or looks to be in flight, is also so incredibly still in the image as you encounter it. So there's an unsettling quality to this that I thought was really beautiful. Amber Patrice Reese, Mary, this I thought was such a really clever use of a substrate. The substrate here is a round of a tree, of basswood, I guess. And the way that and the use of the gold foil integrates with and elevates the subject of the work, I thought was a really wonderful, thoughtful use of materiality here. And then Dan Schlappbeck, another piece I mentioned in my statement, really deep set, really mysterious in person. The face here, it's not the first thing you notice. It's not necessarily the second or third thing you notice. It sort of emerges after you've engaged with the work for a few minutes, and when it emerges, it's a lovely surprise. There's a really fascinating quality to this work, and that again, the periphery and these other elements sort of hit you first. So very masterfully done piece. So yes, these were the jurors' choice pieces. So thank you to everyone who submitted, and congratulations to everyone who was chosen for the show. But these were the ones that I thought really, stood out to me in terms of materiality, in terms of subject, in terms of just the way they stayed with me after I looked. That was sort of in addition to kind of trying to have a diversity of images, across media, across stylistic approach. I was really thinking in looking in curating the show and thinking about who would receive a juror's choice. What stayed with me. I saw the works, I juried them, I saw them again, I encountered them several times, and what were the ones that I just kept thinking about the most. All of them are incredible. All of the pieces in the show find to be incredibly skillful and memorable and exciting. But these were the ones that I just, really struck me. And as I said, had me thinking even after I left the show. So well done and congratulations. Julie, are we looking at other work from the show too? I was kind of keeping my remarks really brief because I wasn't sure if we were going through 100 things. But perhaps if we are not, maybe there could be an opportunity for the winners to speak about their work as well.
Yeah, totally. I can pull up the sales gallery and we can see what they have.
Amanda, I just really would like to say thank you for your honorable mention of my piece. I really appreciate your feedback, and I really enjoyed looking at all the pieces you curated.
Thank you so much, Audrey. And again, as I said, I kept my remarks kind of brief because I wasn't sure if we were looking at only the award winners or everyone. And but truly, I thought your work was absolutely fascinating and beautiful. So thanks for saying that, and thanks for submitting.
Thank you.
And yeah, if anyone else would like to speak about their work, I would really love to hear, anything you'd like to share about that. My impressions are my impressions, but it really is. And as you can see now, so this is the gallery that's up. It's very worthwhile to see the show in person if you can, because it is an absolutely fascinating range of things that are on view to be seen, and really pretty incredible what the range of things people are able to do within such a small scale. So just to give you a sense of what is there. This is, again, this is the online gallery, but yeah, there's, I don't know how we want to do this, Julie. Do we want to go through, or would we just scroll through, or what do you think would work well?
Hello?
Hello? Hi.
Yeah, those of you who know me know that I'll take any opportunity to speak to a group, so here goes. First, thanks for including my work, which is called Repose. And if you can bring that up on the screen, I would also congratulate you on showing a real solid and clearly articulated curatorial vision, the diversity, as you said, that you intended to represent in terms of subject and media and aesthetic approach, I think is very relevant here, very clearly demonstrated. So I appreciate that. This is part of a little mini series that I work on as the opportunity arises, which I, for lack of anything more clever or creative, I call the Dead Bird series. This is a small bird of a type I don't know, couldn't identify, that flew into the sliding glass door onto our patio, where I have a couple of bird feeders. And when I heard it, I recognized the sound and jumped up from my chair and went over, and the bird was lying in this position, but with its head lifted and its eyes were still blinking. And I thought, oh, it's stunned, it'll get up and fly away. But when I went to get a camera, by the time I came back, this is what I found. So it's not posed. This is the way the bird fell. And I thought the texture and the patterns of the wings and the tail spread as the bird fell, just contrasted with the diagonals of the decking. And so to me, it's just this sort of perfect stillness that unfortunately only I know is because the bird has died. But I still think it's a beautiful arrangement of line and form. So.
Yeah, thanks for commenting on your piece, Wilfred. I really loved this piece. I thought that, obviously has a certain amount of pathos attached to it, because we know that it's the bird's not alive, but also just kind of a celebration of the beauty of this creature. Yeah. It's very dignified and in its presentation and the sort of articulation in those feathers and just even the symmetry of the composition served to underscore that.
Well, that what you just mentioned, if I may say one last thing, is I'm not looking for the gore or the sort of horror or terror of the birds when I discover them in this way. It is that momentary beauty that I try to only capture when I find it resident there in what I've discovered. And then it's about how I compose it, crop it, manipulate the image in processing it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think this is good. Is there anyone else that would like to shed a little light on their work for us to talk about it a little as we're here?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Hi, Amber. Yes.
Thank you, Amanda, for selecting my piece. I really appreciate it. It's a personal piece to me. I submitted both Mary and Norma. They're my maternal and paternal grandmothers. I wanted to preserve them in something that resembles a geode, and also wanted to use wood to represent my roots. So it's like a deeply personal piece, and just, wanted to capture her essence, or both their essences in the work. So, and this is also my first gallery, so I'm really happy and excited. So thank you.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful. Oh my goodness.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go you please.
And I was gonna say, if you wouldn't mind also showing Norma for a second on the screen. So Norma is my maternal, so my paternal grandmother passed away this year. So I really wanted to do something to preserve her memory. And my maternal grandmother passed away when I was a child. But this picture is really meaningful to me because that's my cousin and also my sister, who's now an adult. And I just, wanted to preserve the good times that I had with both of them.
Amber, thank you so much for sharing that personal backstory. It's so interesting to hear that, because even though I didn't know that specifically about the works when I viewed them, it was very clear to me that, I imagined that these were probably people important to you and familiar to you and loved by you. The care you took in the representation, as well as the sort of symbolic meaningfulness of the choice of substrate and the gold and the color, everything about how you chose to represent them. That content comes through perfectly. So it's lovely to hear you say that, but it's also, the work really does speak to those goals, I think. Congratulations. I'm so delighted to hear this is your first show. What a wonderful thing. I'm sure there will be many, many more.
That's the goal. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else that's here, would you like to tell us a little bit about the story behind the work that you have on view?
I might, I think.
Yeah.
Did I cut somebody off? I hope not.
I'll be next.
Okay. Okay. It's Jennifer Sugarman. And I've been working actually small for the last 42, 43 years. I used to work, I used to have to climb on ladders to do my work. My painting, they were huge. And I realized at some point, because I have a family and I thought, we were just starting a family, and I thought there's no way I'm going to have the time to be able to do that, or the studio at that point to do it. So I realized that I'd always been really intrigued by the small Indian miniatures that I used to go stare at, and just all the color and just how beautiful they were, and how small work really can grab you in a different way from a larger piece. The larger pieces, of course, the size and the brushstroke and everything just hits you right away. But small work is intimate and can be something that you can study, and it's like reading a poem. I mean, it's not the same impact, but what I've always tried to do, and I'm still trying to do it all these years later, is paint a small painting that could be a big painting. In other words, something that really has enough significance, subject, whatever, to be large, but it's shrunken down. Even though when I'm working, I don't think that way, but that is behind my motivation, kind of. And I did the piece, thank you for choosing it, Chasing Shadows, which I've been working in watercolor. Also a change from what I used to do because I can stop and start more easily. And I knew that that would be a problem if I didn't switch mediums because I was working in acrylic. I've always been allergic to all the oil stuff. So that was very short-lived. I think I was in my teens when I started that and went, whoops, can't do that. So acrylic is wonderful. I miss the large acrylics, I really do. But I also love the size of the small things and the intrigue that I can get. And I'm working with different perspectives and kind of trying, they're almost surreal in my mind. They're trying to maybe confuse people a little. I like to get a lot of texture in my work if I can, even though, again, it's very small and that's it really. But I think that one of the main things is I try to work big but small, if that makes sense, to have a big painting in a small space.
It makes so much sense. And I think that was one thing that was very striking about all these works when I finally saw them in the gallery is, most of them could hold a wall on their own, despite the small scale. Thank you so much. What I love about your paintings, Jennifer, there is this incredible delicacy and warmth and that kind of an intimacy that is delivered by the texture. If watercolor is fairly recent for you, it's a lovely medium for you. So,
well, I can't say it's recent, but I mean, because it's been 40 something years, but and I really try to get
with acrylic.
Yeah, I try to get really deep tones with it, which is, a lot of layers and so that it isn't the real washy. It's not traditional by any means in terms of handling the paint. Though I love traditional watercolor too, but that is not for the most part what I'm trying to do. So thank you.
And that's what's really striking about it, as well as the composition here, I think is such a standout aspect of this work is it surprises me spatially. I'm in an interesting, it places me very interestingly as the viewer. I ask questions about where I am, what I'm looking at, how I'm looking at it. It works frontally, but also in a spatial sense.
Thank you. Yes.
Really magical.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I'm Barbara Stubbs.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, and if she wants to pull up my image.
Oh,
there.
Yes.
So what I loved about this was the idea of bronze in such a small, appearing so in such a small way that bronze has such a solidness to it, and to present it in a very small, delicate way. I just love the opposites. I also thought it presented a message of destruction or decay in the leaf. So thank you so much for having me in the show, and also to the MFA for their sponsorship. I appreciate it.
Barbara, thank you. I love this piece as well. And some of the things you commented on, just the idea of something so tiny and ephemeral, that leaf could blow away. It's delicate, it's decaying. The insects will fly, and we won't see them again. And that you've taken this moment and sort of distilled it into something with an incredible weight. The confluence of those two things is really lovely, affording us an opportunity to really peer at something that we wouldn't, in all likelihood, get to engage with on that level. It also, I know this is not the type of insects that you were representing, but I couldn't help but think back to our cicada event over the summer here in Maryland. It was quite the show. So there was a little bit of that reverberating in my mind as well. Very beautiful work. Thank you so much for submitting.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
I'd be happy to share some of my, this is Audrey Zara Franklin, and my piece was Resplendent Biodegradation. It's part of my current collection called New Growth. And I don't know how many of you resonate with this, but I mean, being so long in isolation as artists, sometimes can be a positive for incubation. But I'm deeply inspired by our natural world. And during the early pandemic, it was spring, and especially the first signs of life after a long winter, or after a forest fire, when the landscape is unrecognizable from what we previously knew it to be. So I've really started to become kind of enamored with those first signs of life, and those are moss, lichen, and fungi. And when walking on top of them, we hardly notice their intricacies, their complex structure, or just how far-reaching the organisms expand. And as I began studying this category of plant life, I was impressed at their resilience and necessary foundation in our natural world. And as the collection began to evolve, I started to notice subtle themes in what we as a global society were faced with. And these first small signs of life had so much in common. Globally, we were all examining our small decisions in different ways because we needed to look closely or had the imposed time to do so. Similar to the ways you need to be able to appreciate moss, lichen, and fungi, to stop and look at it very closely. And really what we've been doing is examining our own foundational growth. Like, we now have opportunities to be more inclusive and expansive than before, to prioritize our truths in ways that weren't visible to us without looking closely, and really to see the interconnectedness of our humanity. And from a personal perspective, how much our quality of life reflects the individual choices we make each day. So much like a forest fire, our lives may not grow back the same way, they may not look the same, but our perception has forever changed. And that is really the foundation of my collection, New Growth. So as the world continues to evolve and expand in different ways than before, so does my collection, and so do I. It's truly been an immersive experience for me as an artist. The early pieces were really small. I think that I was studying the scale so much so, and as I continue to show more and hear more feedback from curators, jurors, and gallery owners, I've scaled up considerably. And that has also been a really unique experience, to start small and now create really large pieces. So thank you so much. This was a phenomenal experience to be part of this show.
Thank you so much. That's beautifully eloquent. Again, it's really interesting for me to hear from you all directly, because the way that the things you have to say about your work sort of dovetail with the sense I got looking at it. And yeah, I don't know how eloquently I even said it when it first came up in the slideshow, but these pieces, they're really like these textures, and I suspected it might be from the natural world in some way, but I couldn't quite place it. But the thing about my not being able to fully place its connection to specifically like moss and lichen is that it was opened for me to also connect it to some of the other types of things that you were talking about. So holding in my mind simultaneously ideas of the organic, the natural world, but also interconnectedness, something almost futuristic, the networks and technology, a microchip or something. These things were multivalent for me in looking at those textures, and part of what made them so absorbing. So congratulations to you again. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us, for submitting.
Thank you. I really appreciate that feedback.
I don't know if you can hear that. I might have to let my son in so he can meet you all. Would anyone else like to share?
I don't mind saying. I would like to say something. Shh. Patrice here.
Mommy, I want to draw in here.
I'm going to mute myself.
Hi, thank you for during the show and for including me as well. I wanted to talk about my work because when you opened, you were talking about how COVID impacted us and how it impacted our art. And I'm typically, I paint very large abstracts or contemporary works. And when COVID hit, and I also have another job I had taken to help in this political climate. So I work for a legislator, and then the pandemic hit, and it became crazy. So I was working from home, my art residency ended, and I brought my studio home. And so I've got all this stuff going on, and I just felt overwhelmed. And I felt like the world, it's ironically because I'm an extrovert, but I felt like the world had gotten so huge around me. Everything was weighing on me. So the only thing I felt like doing was going to my drawing table and doing something intuitive. And the lines for the nests were so intuitive. And obviously I was nesting at the same time. And I did over 50 nests in these little tiny nests. And I had no desire to do what I normally do, the large paintings, because even though they're, expressive and intuitive, you still have to plan for those. And I just didn't want to plan. I was done after long days of work and dealing with all the different problems that everybody was experiencing from the pandemic. I just wanted to go into my studio, pick up one of these fine little pens and do some intuitive work. And it was all about nesting. So that's where this whole series came from for me.
Fascinating, especially thinking about it in relationship to your job, which I'm sure brought you very much into contact with the sort of the anxieties of the past 2 years. The things that are most important, right? Shelter and connection.
Right.
That's so lovely to hear, and I'd love to see the rest of them. What a wonderful piece. Thank you so much for sharing about it.
Thank you.
I'll talk about mine.
Great. Carol, please.
I did it, it's the bowl of eggs,
Mhm.
and I did it in miniature first.
Oh,
So I did it in 2x3, and that's actually in a show in Arizona right now. And then I liked it so much, I did this larger version, and I might even do an even larger version. And it's a combination of old and new. The bowl is from like the 40s, and the eggs are new life. And that's what I was going for.
this is another one that first of all, you just absolutely exquisite drawing. I love drawing. That's my work. Just a second, but just really exquisite craft here. But also, connecting to that idea of the sense of where our minds are at, the quotidian, the domestic, that idea of rebirth, really interesting too, because that's come up for a couple of other people. Have mentioned the sort of new beginnings. I think Audrey was talking about that with her piece. Just it's very fascinating to see how certain kinds of currents do run through in common with a lot of these very diverse pieces. So thank you so much, Carol. Again, truly a beautiful, beautiful piece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Jim Earle, and I'd like to say a couple words about my piece. It's based on a drawing that I made when we were on a trip to Spain, and there it is on the screen. And I'm going to show it here. This is the original, which is a 3x5" drawing in a sketchbook. And I have hundreds of drawings in these sketchbooks, and I'll just show some, well, I won't even bother to show, but you can see there is a vague resemblance. And what I did was, using photo etching processes, I converted the drawing into a, I think it was 5x8 etching, which is what was selected for the show. Now, I was kind of surprised when the juror selected this one, so I'm just wondering what she saw in it that made her select it.
me unmute myself. I'll tell you, Jim, I first of all, I think, you couldn't have chosen a better subject. Toledo is one of the most beautiful cities in the world by my estimation, but the way you've managed to represent that incredibly, detailed and specific and ornate architecture using the most loose and virtuosic line. It is so, it's almost like you could pull a thread and it would just release into a single line somehow. There's just a comfort and real beautiful sense of expressiveness in the way you make lines, and seeing how seeing that married with that specific subject matter was a lovely surprise, because again, it would be tempting because of the nature of the subject and it's architectural for it to be really rigid and to be really guided by the architectural nature of it, but the softness that's imparted, and again, just the confidence that it's and expressiveness that's exuded by your line really stuck out to me.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear all that. Does a lot for my ego.
Well, that's what we're here for. Thank you so much for submitting, Jim, and I'm delighted that your work is part of the show.
Hi, this is Sally Canzoneri.
Hi, Sally.
Hi. I was going to say my piece, though it may not be obvious, is yet another COVID piece.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and really what it grew out of is that I think I was out and about quite a bit during things, but basically I wanted to do, and I started earlier this year doing a series of photographs of streeteries in DC, because streeteries, I do a lot of work on really the built environment, and in a way, something that is almost particularly part of the built environment and as a response to COVID has been, Washington isn't the only city that has them, but these streeteries, and they also kind of are part of how people have worked together to kind of save the restaurants in the city, which are a really important part of the social life of the city. Anyway, so you may not realize this isn't Adams Morgan, but the way this is cropped, that little umbrella thing at the bottom is actually the top of one of those tall, quite wonderful looking heaters that are used, the propane gas heaters that are used in a lot of the streeteries. So this was, again, another piece that grew out of looking for ways to kind of document what has happened in the epidemic. So
yeah, it was fun.
Mm-hmm. That's really fascinating. And yeah, I loved that really interesting sense of like almost scale shift that happened for me, because when I first looked at it, I didn't see the top of the heater. I was just sort of struck by the geometries and the color. And then, but there's enough there for you to recognize it. And so sometime into looking at it, I'm like, oh, wait, oh, okay. So, and it completely opened it up for me to appreciate it again. But it is so fascinating how malleable our built environment is, how getting back a little bit to what I was just saying about Jim's work, we think of architecture as being so rigid and fixed and permanent, and it's really not. Our cities are really constantly changing and constantly responding and adapting and reflecting the use that is particular to the time. So I think that's a fascinating aspect of this. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for choosing it.
There's a tree dead.
Yeah, that one.
Oh.
Anyone else like to share before we advance?
Hi, this is Catherine Grossfeld. I'm the person with the cupcake.
Oh, excellent.
Now it's a party. And first I want to say, Amanda, thank you for including my piece and seeing a little bit of humor there. I appreciate that. I'm a still life painter. I paint from life. And with this piece, I was just trying to have a little fun and got the cupcake done and the balloons and everything. And then I was like, it needs something. It needs something that's more fun. So I found the Skittles, and then it was like, okay, yeah, now it's a party. So I don't know. It was just a fun painting.
It's very fun and beautifully virtuosely painted as well. So I applaud you. But I couldn't help but think about all of my sons, sort of sad, like that's been the theme of the last 2 years, among other things. It's just yeah, well, we'll have to talk about that afterwards. All right. You want to say hi? Hi. Hi. Trajan. This is Trajan. Do you like this painting? Okay. He's been drawing over here. He shares my studio with me.
Oh, excellent.
But anyways, yeah, I mean, it here too, I mean, I saw all of the humor, but also, there's a kind of a realness there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, COVID has definitely changed things a lot. The big plus side among all of the horrible negatives has been to be in the studio and produce like crazy. I'm sure a lot of people can say the same thing, because I've created over 70 paintings this year alone, and I think a lot of people are in the same boat. It's just a way to deal with it is to just be home and work and work and work.
I think that's very true. And, there, at the beginning, it was noted that I tend to work large, and I do, but I too was working quite small throughout this pandemic. And I think there's, again, something about the time we were in that sort of fomented that.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Anyone else? It's so lovely to hear from all of you directly. And thank you everyone who has shared.
Thank you, Amanda, for being able to carry on and multitask here. It's very, very good.
You do.
It's okay.
Trajan is Trajan. He's 4. His sister is 18 months. And, if I didn't have a sense of humor about little kids busting into Zoom meetings, where would I be?
Well, it makes it even more amazing that you were able to do what you did, choosing from all the pieces that came in for this show. And gosh, I'm in awe.
Truly, I am in awe of all of the artists here, all of the work here. It's truly, it's really inspiring as well to see how engaged, how many incredibly thoughtful, intelligent, skilled, engaged working artists we have that
you get paper in that machine?
I'll tell you in a second, bud. That we have the pleasure to appreciate. It's just it's sort of an embarrassment of riches, really. So I again thank you so much for the opportunity to jury the show and to experience all of your work. Yeah, maybe a little later, okay? I know you're seeing that cupcake and you're thinking, I need to bake. I think
we all are.
I know. I'm getting hungrier and hungrier.
Darn.
It's dinner time.
True. anyways, it was an absolute pleasure. And the show is beautiful. So again, though I know not all of you are local to Maryland, but if you are able to come see the show, I highly recommend it. MFA is such a wonderful space, such wonderful people to work with. And just an absolute pleasure all around. So congratulations again to everyone, to the honorable mentions, to the juror's choice, everyone involved. I truly appreciated this, and yeah, I'm very proud of the show that came about.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. And I appreciate all the input from all of the artists. And that's one of the nice things about a Zoom meeting. You can meet with people who are all over the country and all over the world. And it's really nice to hear from the artists. And you did a great job, Amanda. Thank you again so much. And I think the clock on the wall, it's time for us to close this down. But I do encourage everyone to tell their friends and come on over to the gallery and see these beautiful pieces in person. And also from MFA and me, wish everybody a very happy holiday season. Thanks for joining us.